Hi, it's another day and another episode of Redefining Moments. I'm your host, Kelly, and I'm so happy to have you here with me. Now, as I've said before in our previous episodes, this podcast is here to welcome you on wherever you are at in your journey, in whatever level of self-awareness you are in. It's an opportunity to help you dive deeper, to understand yourself better, to know yourself better, and hopefully find more compassion towards yourself and the world around you. Now, today, I wanted to talk to you about trust. So, I've been having a few epiphanies lately around the concept of trust and how it shows up in our lives. And I realised yesterday that trust is actually at the core of our personal development journeys when it comes to healing and understanding ourselves. Now, a few years back, when I was training as a life coach, I remember having the realization of how can you be confident in something you do not know, trust, or believe in? And the reality is, how many of us actually know, trust, and believe in ourselves? Or know, trust, and believe in the possibilities of life and the world around us? When we were younger, what would have happened is things in life will have created this form of distrust. There'll be areas where we trust fully. We know our worth, we know our value, we know what we're capable of, we know our identity, we know where we fit in the world. And this creates a stem on series of beliefs around us. But there would also be parts of ourselves where we distrust, where we try something and we got mocked or laughed at, where we put ourselves out there and we just failed. And depending on the reaction or responses of the world around us, we would either pick ourselves up and continue to work towards whatever it is we're failing in, or we would run away and we would hide from it and we wouldn't dare do that again. And I guess this is our survival mechanisms as human beings. We've learnt what is safe and what is not. It doesn't come in the form of you do not eat the red berries. It comes in the form of you do not do that action, because if you do that action, you will be shunned. You will not be accepted within our world and within our society. So we begin to create this idea of what's okay and what's not okay. And we lose trust in the world around us. But I think one thing we don't realise when we get to ourselves as adults is we can actually start to create a sense of distrust within ourselves. Every time we don't do that thing we really want to do, or we don't do that action that we know is good for us, we build this sense of shame, sense of guilt, sense of judgment. And we lose and chip away at our own internal trust. And it doesn't mean that us not doing that thing is wrong. It doesn't mean that us not going out into the world and being the healthiest person, or doing the exercise, or eating well, or whatever it is. It's hard to say because we all have our own versions, and I know what my versions of these are. It doesn't mean that we're wrong. I can use, once again, I'm going to keep using this podcast as an example, because for me, this has been the thing I've been shaming myself over for at least 2 years. It's been something that I've been desperately wanting to do. I've bought the mic, I've done everything. Why can't I post that episode? And I've had to go through a series of belief systems, self-awareness, self-understanding. I've built on my internal trust enough to take that first leap. And now I've taken that first leap, I'm thinking, why haven't I done this? Why haven't I been doing this? Why have I been delaying this? Why have I stopped myself from doing the thing that brings me so much joy and happiness, in sharing my insights and perspectives with the world, whatever they may be? So trust is an interesting thing, because I've realized through this awareness, it feels so obvious now that trust is at the core. Trust is at the core, at least, of my understanding of what we're doing when we're building our confidence, our self-esteem, our self-understanding, our self-awareness, our healing. Trust is at the core of it. We're either relearning to trust in our own intuition, our own instincts, our own sense of understanding and response to life and those around us, or we're learning to trust in the world around us. We're reframing our narratives of people in our lives or experiences in our lives, which help us heal and help us trust in a person again, or trust in our experiences again. And when we change that narrative, we then get feedback that enforces that trust. But the problem is, when we're going out into the world with this filter of distrust, all we're going to see is distrust. All we're going to be receiving is, I can't do this thing because it is unsafe, and therefore I'm going to get hurt, or I'm going to be a failure, or I'm going to be miserable, even though, ironically, we're still within that pit of misery. Not always, because we find areas that we do feel safe in and we do trust. And I guess this is what we can consider our comfort or control zones. It's the areas in life where we know that we can trust, we know is safe. But anything outside of that, our stretch zone, if you don't know this, there's 3 zones: your comfort zone or your control zone, your stretch zone, and your panic zone. So the stretch zone is where you're pushing your boundaries, you're learning a skill, you're allowing yourself to understand a bit more of, I don't know, something that's challenging you, but not challenging you to the point that you freeze or run or go into fight or flight. It's challenging you enough to push yourself out of your territory of comfort and control. And it's giving you the opportunity to trust in the situation, to know more of what you might be capable of if you just step outside, put your foot in the water a tiny bit and test it. So it's the stretch zone is just our zone of trust. It's giving ourselves the opportunity to challenge and see what's safe. Maybe if we walk a tiny bit further out of the forest, we can see if we die. But we do it enough so we still know we've got all the tools and skills we need available to us to make sure we're safe. So the panic zone, on the other hand, is the area of distrust, the area that is not safe. So everything seems impossible and scary and overwhelming because we don't trust it, or we don't trust ourselves within that situation. And the thing I've learnt is the more we expose ourselves and step into this stretch zone and expand our circle of control and comfort, the more we can go out and step out into that area of stretch, or even sometimes panic, and go, I trust myself. I trust that I am capable of doing this. I trust that I am able to go out into the world and challenge myself, to be able to have the skills to respond to life. And I think that can naturally happen as we get older anyway, because the more experience we have, the more knowledge of life we have, the easier it is to tackle life when it gets uncomfortable or it's more challenging. Because, as the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But in reality, what doesn't kill you can either make you trust life more or distrust life more. And in some cases, we put our guard up and we protect ourselves. And we, even though it's made us stronger, sometimes it's made us toughen in a way that stops us from really experiencing the blessings and joys that life has to offer us. It can stop us from actually being loved or opening ourselves up to love. It can stop us from experiencing joy. It can stop us from actually having that conversation with somebody that could change our lives. It's a sense of protection that makes our world smaller and smaller and brings our comfort control zone into a narrower and smaller space. So we're not able to see the opportunities. We're not able to expand and explore. And sometimes as we go through life, it does get smaller and smaller and smaller. Our circle we're exposed to gets smaller and smaller and smaller. We lock ourselves away. And actually that can be really lonely. It can be really sad. And it's not until you start to put yourself back in that stretch zone and push yourself into opportunities that you start to realize that actually the world doesn't have to be lonely. It doesn't have to be isolating. It doesn't have to be within that restricted barrier, like the restricted way of thinking. I think for me, like this very much goes into when I personally lost my job when I was 21. So I literally had so much passion at university. I felt like I did very well. I was motivated, enthusiastic, excited. I managed to take action that allowed me to be a quote unquote success. I got a first class degree. I did everything I should have done at university in terms of getting an education and getting the job at the end of it, and just making myself stand out. And then about a year into, or just over a year into my my working life, the start of my working life, I was fired because I made mistakes, and they were general mistakes, but they were still mistakes. And my coping strategy is to go deeper, to figure out why I'm making a mistake, but to the point it becomes obsession. And I became obsessed with understanding why I was making mistakes, understanding what it was that caused me to do something wrong in my job. But I didn't really have the tools outside of that to understand why I was making the mistake. Like now I've done my coaching, now I've done and had a lot of life experience. I now know that actually it was just I was in unconscious competence. And when you are in unconscious competence, it's very easy for something to happen in that moment for you to then suddenly become unconsciously incompetent, or consciously incompetent because you're suddenly aware that you've made a mistake. But it's because I was in this moment in my life where I didn't have those resources and I didn't have that information. And it wasn't until recently, so 10 years after that's happened, that I suddenly realised how much I've been living my life in fear because of that moment. Although I can see the strength and the power, the redefining moment of my life was losing my job. And I could see the strength and power that has come as a result of me losing that job. I have become a stronger person. I wasn't forced into the trajectory of life of having a career because I fell at the first hurdle. I felt like a complete failure. The whole career, marriage, kids. Suddenly, how am I meant to have everything else when I've failed at the first hurdle? I couldn't even do that well. And because of that, it was almost an opportunity for me to go, well, if I failed in that, then what do I do now? I didn't know what else to do because I'd almost set up in my head that I'm going to be a radiographer for the rest of my life. So I'd already failed at that. How can I be anything more? And for me, I think the gift of that moment was I was then able to explore who I was beyond that. I needed to redesign my identity to discover who I was beyond that job and title, because I think most of us, especially probably my generation, we grew up with families and a generation which very much identified themselves as their career. As a result of that, we can very much see our own careers as our identity. And I do think that is shifting. Like the more I look at my generation and the generations after me and the generations coming through, I can see that our identity isn't as closely connected to our career, but just our lives and living it and enjoying it and finding not so much, well, I guess more our passion. But when your identity is so wrapped up in something, it means that you can become very protective and defensive of that. When things do not go the way they should, like my career, then suddenly my whole world feels like it was ripped away from underneath me. And there'll be other situations where that wouldn't have bothered me that much. That wouldn't have impacted me that much. But I personally felt like a laughingstock because I felt like I did so well at university that suddenly I felt like I was falling. Like, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I wanted to be. I suddenly was off the path, off what I expected. And nothing about this is wrong because I think we all have this in whatever way it is. It's our world of trust. I trusted that the world should turn out in a way where I have a career, where I meet the love of my life, where I get married, have children, because that's what so many of us have done, and it's what we observe in everyday society. And losing my job suddenly exposed me to so much more of myself that I didn't actually allow myself to understand or know. It helped me identify, even though at the time I didn't realise, the different areas I had been pigeonholing myself into to feel accepted in life. And because I was accepted, that was my area of trust. I will do the things that allow me to feel accepted because life will work out that way. And suddenly I was put into a position where technically I was rejected in the worst way I thought possible. And it wasn't just you're fired. It was you now need to be investigated. And me hearing stories at my hospital of people saying, don't do a Kelly. And it brought so much shame to me because I tried creating this identity, this world of trust, and suddenly I distrusted the world because nothing would go right. And then when I decided to explore other career paths, such as teaching, which of course is another avenue where, similar to radiography, I think there's a lot of people involved and there's a lot of expectations. And I was still in my world of distrust when I went into teaching. So it meant that when things started to go wrong or not the way I thought they should, I was like an open wound. Suddenly the world was really not going how I thought it should. The way I described that year of my life, because it truly felt like it, is my rose-tinted glasses were smashed to pieces. And I guess that's what it is. It's I'm looking through the world through my filter of distrust, and because nothing bad had happened to me at that point in my life, I didn't realise that the world could be so hurtful, the world could be so painful. And yeah, it sent me on this journey of learning to trust. I wanted to find peace within the world again. I wanted to find peace within myself again. I needed to build my world of trust because in my eyes, in my experience, I had hit rock bottom. Everything I knew had shattered on the floor and I didn't know what parts of myself were me anymore. But the beauty, in a way, is when your world is shattered, when it's completely ripped apart, you can start to pick the pieces that are you. You can start to explore the pieces that are you and who you wish to be. And through that, I started to discover more pieces of what my identity was. But the interesting thing is, life's gone on. I've used a label in my early 20s, and as I've got to my 30s, I've started to see that actually labels can be a trap as well. Labels can keep us within this idea of trusting the world, and it can keep us trapped within this concept of feeling safe. But the truth is, the world is as it is. The labels, they only mean something if we allow them to. And life will be what it will be, regardless. We can't control the outcomes of our lives. We can't control what happens to us, but what we can control is how we respond to life. What is it we do in life? And not doing it from a survival mechanism. It's stepping into our power and actually going, what is it I can do in this situation that powerfully aligns with who I am? It's not coming from a place of how can I please everyone or how can I make this right, which I would say is coming from the place of trust sometimes, because we're trying to manipulate the world in some way or the other. I always think back to the meme of someone, the video of someone mopping up the ocean, and they're trying to control how the world turns out by mopping the ocean. You can't control the ocean. You can't control it. You can't clean it up. In some ways we can. But once again, that shows the complexity of can'ts. So if you look at the Wright brothers, they probably said to people, human beings will fly one day. And everyone's like, what are you on about? Are you stupid? Are you crazy? Like, someone lock them up. But they believed so intently that human beings will fly. They found a way that human beings would fly. And this is the thing. Sometimes we get so stuck in how we distrust the world that we're not able to see the possibilities within it. But going back to what I was saying at the beginning, our healing journey isn't about forgiving. Well, forgiving is part of the trust, but at the core of everything to do with healing, it's learning to trust ourselves and our place in the world, learning to trust our identity. And as a result, you show up in the world differently. When you're not feeling like an empty void, looking for approval or love or whatever it may be, acceptance, whatever, you don't go out into the world like a black hole, taking all that energy in. Instead, when you feel that void is not there anymore, you feel accepted, at peace with who you are. You trust who you are in this moment, because we all exist. All of us exist. We all are on this planet. It doesn't matter who you are, what's happened in your life, your experiences. You are alive. We're all alive. We all have the opportunity to practice being a better human today. That's it. And some of us have had more challenging circumstances or experiences that have led us to who we are today. Some of us might have certain things going on in our brain, which means that we show up with more aggression, or we've learned a certain way of behaving. And in a way, that's not our fault. It's something that has been almost gifted to us, whether we like it or not. It's something where we've had to experience. But the power is not allowing that to rule our lives anymore. Not allowing that to be the story we continue to tell ourselves for the rest of our lives. We have the power to change that story, whether you believe that or not. We do. We all do. We have the power to redefine that narrative. I feel my own life is evidence of that. I feel like I thought I was stupid, unintelligent. I don't even think I would have done something like this when I was younger. I didn't feel like I had anything worth saying. And because I didn't feel intelligent, why would anyone want to listen to me? So we can either choose to continue down that narrative, or we can choose to explore beyond it. What if I wasn't intelligent? What if I was smart? What if I was capable? We don't have to stick to that narrative that was given to us when we were younger. I would say that it is challenging. I watched October Sky the other day, and I've also watched another film which was also a really good example of this, and it's not coming to mind right now, which is frustrating, but it will come back to me. But there's been a few films I've watched recently. I Swear, if you haven't watched it, it's just come out in the cinema, and it's about a man and his experience with Tourette's. and it's inspirational, but it is also frustrating at some points because you see the suffering that that person's had to experience. And it wasn't until certain people came into their lives that they actually saw beyond what was possible. They were able to see that they were so much more than their Tourette's, and they didn't have to live within that shame of saying something at the wrong time or their condition. And I think that's how I feel my life has been. And I think a lot of people who've been on this journey will be able to resonate with this, is that sometimes you just need someone to show up in your life and show you that you are more than you thought you were. I've had several moments in my life where I've looked at a certain situation, a certain experience, and I've gone, wow, actually, I did that. Like, I'm so much more capable than I thought. Even doing this, I share things out of pride because sometimes I'm in shock at my capability and what I've been able to achieve. And I've learned the things in my own life that makes me really proud of who I am. And it's learning what that looks like for you. Either being that for someone else, being someone else's cheerleader, or being your own cheerleader. And it's hard because I think the thing that really shifts you, and I know this for myself, especially recently, is when someone actually tells you you are enough. They tell you that you are worthy, that you are amazing, kind, beautiful. Like when my friend told me that I could be a model, I was like, no, I'm not photogenic. And then actually now if you see the photos that I take and the modeling that I can do, I'm a great model. But I needed someone to believe in me so I could believe in myself. But what if we could take that person away? What if we didn't need someone to tell us we are good enough? What if we could just tell ourselves that we're good enough? That would be my gift to any of you. If you're listening, I want you to know in this moment that you are worthy. You are good enough exactly as you are. You are capable of whatever you put your mind to. And not in the sense of when parents say it to their children, oh, my child can do anything. If you're determined enough, you will make it happen. Look at the Wright brothers with the plane. At some point, this is why I love inspirational movies. At some point, someone would have said to them, no, that's not possible. But when you're able to look deeper into yourself and go with something that truly lights you up in life, truly inspires you, it's like something is drawing you in that direction. When you have that light inside you and it's pulling you somewhere, and you know that it's possible and you trust that it is possible, you will do everything to make it possible. And yes, you might fail. It might end up being something that doesn't happen and doesn't work. But it might be the very thing that you needed to take you on that journey, to give you the skills, the opportunities, the mindset to achieve something greater than where you are in this moment. So it's not always about the destination, it's about the experiences you gain on that journey. So going back to the whole point of this talk today, it's learning to trust yourself. It's learning to take that leap and have that faith and see where life takes us. And through that, we can learn to trust in life, in ourselves, and in the opportunities around us a little bit more. We just need to have the ability to look for it to begin with. So how can you go out today and observe a tiny bit more trust in the world? How can you take that moment to trust yourself a bit more? Whether it's a 5 minutes to have something where you go, right, I'm going to do this thing I've been putting off for a long time, or I'm going to start that exercise program today. Don't wait for New Year's. Don't wait for the world to tell you you are going to start something. Take the moment now to trust yourself and take that step forward. whatever it may be. And maybe next time you listen to the next episode, you'll have something that you can say to yourself, I did that. And I am so proud of myself. Because there is no greater feeling when you're able to look at what you've done and go, wow, I'm more capable than I thought I was. And being able to tell yourself that every single day. So I wish you the opportunities, the wonder, the curiosity, and a chance to lean into trust and show yourself more of what you are capable of. Until next time, speak to you soon.